And now on Curtain Radio, I have immense pleasure of introducing a musician whose name you may not know, but whose sound you will have heard on TV and film soundtracks and some of the most famous pop songs of all time. His name? Flick. Vic Flick. Vic Flick, he's the man who played that theme that I believe just about everybody knows. Welcome to Curtain Radio, Vic, and sincere thanks for taking time out to speak with us today.
Thank you for asking me on your show, Mike. I know we've spoken on the telephone several times and corresponded by email, but this is certainly a privilege to be on the same show and speaking personally with you. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
It's great to speak with you, Vic. Now, before we get on to the Bond era, of course, your extensive career as a session musician and your fabulous book, Vic Flick Guitarman, may we move almost right back to the very beginning of your professional career and your days with the Bob Court Skiffle Group, famous, of course, for the introduction of the TV show 6-5 Special, as I believe it was with this group that you first met John Barry.
Yes, it was. The Bob Court Skiffle Group did play an important part in my life, in as much as that it was with them that the Bob Court Skiffle and the John Barry Seven and Paul Anka were doing this nationwide tour of England. So I kind of, that's where I met John Barry, but way before that, I used to do various gigs around, doing weddings and playing in pubs and, goodness, what any musician did at first start when they're starting off. And I met a wonderful guy called George Jennings, a bass player, and he happened to be the bass player in the Bob Court Skiffle. The Bob Court Skiffle wasn't actually doing a great deal, but so this is why I suppose George was in the same pub as I was, and we were in the little group that got together to entertain the drinkers. George was obviously, I suppose, impressed with the way I played, and at the same time, the lead guitar player with Bob Court Skiffle was leaving. That was a guy called Ken Sikora. He was going off to be a producer or something in BBC West of England. So the next time I went, the next week, George turned up at about 12:45 records and said, "Hey, learn these. I'm going to see if we can get you in with a Bob Court Skiffle now that Ken's leaving." So I said, okay. So I took them home and played them over and over and over again, learned all the bits and pieces and the solos and the tunes and the chords and God knows what else. And so there came this chance of an audition with Bob. There was one wonderful guy, actually. He was an advertising executive, not too tall, with a little beard on him and quite a character. So we did the audition, and of course every tune that Bob called out I knew and played the solo like Ken Sikora, and he said, "Well, that's it, welcome to the Bob Court Skiffle." He said, "This is great news because we've just got this tour with Paul Anka." And as the John Barry Seven were accompanying Paul Anka, that's how I became acquainted with and got to know John Barry. And after the tour kind of finished, exchanged telephone numbers and contacts, and like any musicians do, musician's life is contacts and people. The more you know, the more chance of something happening. Well, in this case, several months later, I always remember my mother calling me. I was at home and she said, "Oh, Vic," she said, "there's a man on the phone. I think he's from up north." So I came down, didn't know who it was, and there it was John Barry. And he said, "Look," he said, "I've got this very important thing developed." He said, "We've got this audition at the Metropolitan Edgware Road in the centre of London, where all the agents, all the managers, and all the showbiz people and TV presenters and producers and goodness, fantastic. Everybody could think of was going to be there. There was a couple of other acts there, but as far as I was concerned, this was the most important." So he said, "I want you to join the band," he said, "because we've got some stuff where we're going to have to read music, and I know you can do that." So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." So I went to his apartment, picked up the music, and went back home and had a look at it and memorised it. And I think it was 10 days later, we were on the stage at the Metropolitan Edgware, and I must admit I was a little bit nervous. It's quite a thing to be suddenly confronted with spotlights and a big crowd and with playing tunes that you haven't really played in public before. But it all worked out good, and as I say, that's how I came across John Barry.
After meeting John Barry, you became the local guitarist in the group and later, of course, the group's leader. Now, I understand your and John Barry's first foray into cinema music was with the John Barry 7 and the 1960 film Beat Girl.
It was an important recording session, really, when we did Beat Girl. It was very important for John Barry in as much that it was starting him off big time in his film writing career, and also the sound that the Seven got and the recording techniques that was used. We did the film in a big old film studio in the west of London, and the techniques there were based on great big orchestras. You know, they'd have 24, 36 strings, and they'd hang this couple of mics over them, and close miking they hadn't heard of at all. So when we got there and we were set up, and then this guy came wandering around setting the mics up, sometimes our amplifier had this mic in front of it about 5 feet away. I couldn't believe it. I said, "You sure?" He said, that's where it's staying, that's where I like it. So I said, okay. So only recorded the first one, which is the main title, and we all went into the box to listen, and silence. And John Barry said, "I can't have that, that sounds terrible." So diplomatic relations were severed immediately at that point, and from then on it was just hard work between the engineer, and we finished up setting our own mics. In fact, I shoved my mic right up in front of it, and I don't know whether that was how we got this particular sound, but it certainly worked. So in retrospect, maybe I was responsible for the sound of the James Bond theme, because we used that techniques when we went into the studio to do the James Bond theme, which at the particular time wasn't anything out the normal. It was a session, and didn't know that it was going to go on and on and on.
Let's listen to the main theme from the film Beat Girl, Vic, that features that particular sound to which you've just referred. The main theme from the 1960 film Beat Girl by the John Barry 7. The film featured a new recording star that we'll come to a little bit later on, Adam Faith. Incidentally, it was the first British film soundtrack to be released on a long-playing record.